Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first edition of 2016 FireBytes, Securing Your Wireless. Wanted to let everyone know we did change the title slightly. It's still going to address securing distributed enterprises, but we're really going to focus on secure wireless. And just like each time, we have everyone on mute, but we definitely want to welcome your questions and your comments and feedback via the Q&A panel on the right-hand side, or you can follow up with either one of us after the webinar via email. Johan's already got his email up on the screen. And without further ado, I think we'll jump right in and get started. Johan, I'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Welcome to another exciting edition of FireBytes. This edition, we're going to be covering securing your wireless. And as Wendy previously mentioned, we are changing it just a slight bit. And part of that is because of the exciting announcement that we just had of the AP300 with the AC. Now, on top of that, I've gone out, presented a little bit at trade shows over the last couple of months. And as I'm talking to people, I realize that people are still having their wireless guest users, so their guest wireless users, maybe it's a bring your own device or people are bringing it from home, and that guest wireless is on the same network as the private or trusted network. Now, in some cases, that might not be that bad, but when you talk about PCI compliance, obviously a very big deal of separating out that traffic, and it actually is quite a best security practice to be able to separate that out so that you have, for instance, your trusted or optional traffic going over your wireless. So with that, we are going to cover a few things on the agenda. We're going to review the WatchGuard wireless options. Now we have the internal wireless options as well as the external. We'll cover those shortly. Then we're going to talk about configuring the built-in wireless on the T10, the T30, T50, using those aliases. We're going to give you a little secret tip on there that you can actually use the wireless on the T30 or a T10 or a T50 and build a wireless to wired bridge. I use it all the time when I'm traveling, hotel rooms. I join the guest Wi-Fi and redistribute that. You can use that for any number of uses. Very useful. Then we're going to talk a little bit about rogue access point detection, and then we're going to go into hands-on configuring the AP300 with the WatchGuard wireless gateway controller. Now, if you aren't familiar with it, WatchGuard, in every firewall, we have a gateway wireless controller that's absolutely free. You can control your access points, so whether you're pushing out 5 access points or 100 access points, you can push all those SSIDs automatically to all of those devices and be able to have that single pane of glass management that you've come to love from WatchGuard. We're also going to talk about configuring VLANs, talk about configuring SSIDs. We're going to pair the access point to a gateway wireless controller, show you how easy that is, and then we're going to go into configuring the hotspot. So as I did mention previously, previous sessions, many of you do know me. I don't like to run through slides. So after this one, we're basically going to throw out the slides, go into a hands-on demo, and show you how easy it is to secure your wireless. Real quick, just wanted to recap on the wireless family with WatchGuard currently. So we have the AP100, AP102, AP200. As I mentioned, we just announced, or not just, but we've had the AP300 for a little bit now. And the big thing on that, obviously, is the AC. When we look at the speeds that are on there, we have things such as band steering. So if someone tries to join at a 2.4, we want to go ahead and automatically bump them up. So an iPhone, an iPad, we can automatically steer them over to the 5 gigahertz channel. And as you look at that, we're doing 1.3 gigabits per second on that 5 gig speed. Obviously, there's some more other factors involved with that, but looking at coming from a 300 megabits per second to 1.3, amazing difference. In fact, I have an AP300 at home, and anytime I take it out on the road with me to travel to boot camps, my wife says, gosh, Johan, what's going on? The wireless slowed down. So when we talk about the AC speeds, phenomenal. you have to experience it to see what that actually means for your network. We also have the T10W, T30, and the T50W. Now, a lot of times I'm out there, many of you might be familiar with the 26s, the 33s that we previously had with the built-in wireless as well. A lot of people sometimes ask me, gosh, Johan, why is the new T-series boxes plastic? And when you really think about what's going on, we don't have internal or external antennas, and we have wireless, built-in wireless access point radio within there. And obviously, as many of you know, if the case were metal, that would just demolish the signal and completely make it unusable. So by having that plastic case, allows us to maximize those radios within the T-series boxes. So looking at that, again, the central access point controller is included at no extra charge in every firewall model. So with that, let's go ahead and throw out the slides, get into a live hands-on demo, and show you exactly what we can do with WatchGuard. So many of you do understand that we have 3 different ways to manage our firewalls. We have the web UI, we also have the policy manager, the Windows application, and then we have a command line interface. Now, in this particular scenario, the policy manager is great because it allows us to configure it, make all of our changes, and not and wait to save it till the very end. If I were making those changes on the web UI, all those changes would be live, and I would automatically be kicked in this case because I'm using the wireless as a bridge on the T10 series. So let's go ahead and show you everything that I'm showing you today on Policy Manager is available through the web UI. It's just obviously it's as you save it, it becomes a live change. So going on here, we're going to go into looking at the built-in wireless on the T10, T30, T50. Now, I did want to show you one little hidden tip and trick is that you can actually go in and change this to maybe a T50 or change it to a wired model to be able to play with that. So play with the extra settings. So when we talk about, you know, an upgrade, maybe you're running a 33 or you're running a 515, and you look at leveraging some of the newer, let's say you upgrade to an M500, our first 64-bit operating system on there with those throughputs, you can just go in and change your configuration and be able to migrate all of your settings over right away on there. So as we look at, for instance, network, we're going into the wireless now. Now what people don't understand or don't realize is that we can use the wireless client as an external interface. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and configure wireless. We can say, let's join, for instance, Starbucks. And in this case, Starbucks might be an open system. I wouldn't, it'd be kind of interesting seeing me walk into Starbucks with my WatchGuard firewall, but we can actually go in, set the encryption algorithm as disabled, click OK, and now that's going to join the Starbucks Wi-Fi. So I could sit there and have a completely secure session at Starbucks by establishing that branch office VPN back to my corporate office. Or we can change the access points into what we're talking about, secure access points. Now, with this, we see access point 1, 2, and 3, and that just means that there's actually one radio in there, and those are the SSIDs that are associated with those. So we can have a max of 3 SSIDs on these access points. So in this case, we can go in and we can make a trusted network. I'm just going to type in a sample IP here. Now this interface name, we can leave it as WatchGuard Wireless Access Point, or we could say, let's go ahead and rename it just so that we're aware that it's a little more friendly here. We can disable DHCP because I don't want to go through the time right now to run through setting up a DHCP server. Go into wireless. Now, we have a couple of things here. So broadcast SSID and respond to SSID queries simply means that when you go look at your available networks, that's actually going to show up as an available network. You can have it not broadcast as SSID, and some people use that just as a more of a a baseline generic security precaution to not respond to that. However, I would not rely on having that be your sole security strategy. You can log authentication events on there. You can also prohibit client-to-client wireless network traffic. So maybe not so much in a wireless trusted environment for your employees, but certainly when we talk about having guest Wi-Fi devices, this is an advantageous benefit with WatchGuard, being able to prohibit someone at Starbucks. You have a Johnny at Starbucks trying to hack, let's say, Roy. We can block that client-to-client hacking by prohibiting this. So in this case, we want to say, you know what, let's go ahead and name this WatchGuard Trusted, make it a key, and let's just say WatchGuard is the best, and that's a WPA. You can choose a WPA PA2 pre-shared key. And then you can also set up MAC address or MAC access control by restricting or allowing a list of devices on there by MAC address. So in this case, we have our wireless trusted, wireless, so an SSID is going to be WatchGuard trusted. Now we're going to go in and actually set up the guest Wi-Fi SSID. So when we look at this, we have a few different options for interface type. We have trusted, optional, and custom. We can also do VLANs on there. But honestly, if you're just running, for instance, a T30 maybe in a restaurant, you don't necessarily need to go into a complex configuration of a VLAN. What we can actually do is just change this to either a custom or an optional network on here. So in this case, I'm going to just change the IP slightly. We're going to keep the same, we're doing a /24. We're going to make this guest Wi-Fi on here. Now what WatchGuard actually does is by using a different interface type on here, what that allows us to do is separate that configuration. By default, WatchGuard's not going to allow trusted alias to be able to talk to anything on the optional and vice versa. So what this allows us to do is separate that and isolate that traffic so that we don't have that. Now in some cases, you might actually need to have your trusted be able to talk to your optional. I've seen cases where people use optional, for instance, as a DMZ, so you can create policies to be able to allow that, but by default, it's not allowed, that cross alias communication. We're going to, in this case, we're going to broadcast and respond to SSID queries. We're going to prohibit the client-to-client wireless network traffic. And in this case, we're going to make it an open system. So we're going to say WG, and then we'll do guest as a SSID on there. We're not doing any encryption, so anyone can join on there. And obviously, we're not going to tie into MAC address. You could make a third one. This is a good point to bring up. If you know about, or if you don't know about wireless and SSIDs, the more SSIDs that are being broadcasted, your radios are going to slow down a bit. So obviously not a concern if you have 3 SSIDs on there, but as you start to add up and you get 10 SSIDs on your access points, it's going to start to slow down your wireless communication. We're going to go ahead and while we're here, look at the settings for enable rogue access point detection. Now why is this important? You might ask yourself, and that's a great question. And let's take a average scenario where we go down to Starbucks and we see Starbucks Wi-Fi. So everyone, let's say we have 20 computers joined to Starbucks Wi-Fi. All of a sudden a hacker comes in and says, gosh, if I can get everyone to join my access point, I can start to sniff all their traffic. So in some cases, not necessarily with Starbucks, hackers are able to bump off an access point, reset it, reboot it, and then they bring their own access point up with the same SSID. Now all of a sudden, all these new clients are joined to this rogue access point. So this is a great scenario where we can go ahead and just probe the airspace to see if anyone's broadcasting the same SSID as we are. Now in this case, if you're in an apartment complex or near other radios, you're going to get quite a few notifications, which is good. But we can go ahead and create exceptions here and say, you know what, we don't necessarily want to get alerts every time we see you know, McDonald's come up with our Wi-Fi, because we know that's a trusted network. However, if anyone takes over the same SSID, then you can be alerted and have that visibility through Dimension. Now, the schedules is that you can schedule a scan, because it's going to make that radio unusable. So the radio can only be as a server or a client. So in the event that it's doing a scan, it's going to look for, it's going to be in a client role and not be able to be a server and serve out the SSID. So we can go ahead and schedule that. So at this point, we essentially have configured an access, or the T10 access points, to have a trusted for our employees, and then have a optional for our guest network. And that's as easy as having that separation for those two wireless SSIDs. So that's the T10W. Now I did want to go into how to configure the access point 300 with the wireless gateway controller, configure the VLANs, which many of you probably are in that scenario more than in the T10 scenario. So let's bring up a configuration here with our T10, or excuse me, this is the T30. So now I did pre-build some of that. We're going to look at those settings and how that needs to be configured to be able to enable those services. So now if we go under Network and go under Configuration, the first step is to configure those VLANs. And in this particular case, for the sake of time, we want to keep these FireBytes sessions down to about 30 minutes. So for the sake of time, I've pre-built a lot of these for you. So when we look at this, we have a three different VLANs pre-built on here. So we have VLAN management on port, or VLAN ID 1. What that does is that allows us to be able to discover access points that are not discovered yet. So when you bring in, let's say, AP 300 onto your network and you have VLANs configured, by default management VLAN is VLAN 1. So we want to go ahead and configure that so it can discover those AP 300s that are coming on the network. Then the next step is that we want to go ahead and configure two additional VLANs, and they can be whatever IDs you want and whatever IP address mappings you would like to configure. Here we can see the difference between 18 and 19 octet. We are configuring one as our trusted network as Wi-Fi VLAN 100, and then the guest Wi-Fi as VLAN 200. Now, if you're not familiar with VLANs, that is a virtual local area network, and that's basically keeping that whole subnet of computers completely separate from the other subnet. So completely secure, PCI compliant, being able to run that PCI traffic on a separate local area network than your other ones, and that's through virtual VLANs. So if we look at the settings on this, again, pretty straightforward. We have a security zone of trusted. Again, the other ones are optional, custom, or external. So maybe your DMZ is running at optional and your guest traffic is running at custom. But in this case, if we look at the guest VLAN ID 200, as I mentioned, and we're running that as an optional network. In this case, we have the DHCP set up, server set up, and we have a range of 50 IP addresses that we can give our clients on here. So then the next step is to go into interfaces and assign those VLANs to an interface. So if you configure the VLANs and you try to get out of it, click OK, and you don't have the interfaces configured, you're going to receive an error message saying you need to assign that to an interface. So in this particular case, on the T30, port 4, or interface 4, which is actually the 5th port. Fantastic little secret about that, well, it's not that little of a secret, is that there's a PoE port on the T30 and the T50. So what that allows you to do is, whether it's an access point or a VoIP phone, you can tie that right off of that port and be able to power that. So as we look at that, again, we have the AP300 plugged directly in, getting its power, so I don't need to buy any additional power bricks for that. Interface 4, I'm going to say, you know what, let's go ahead and send receive tag traffic for these selected VLANs. So we have my Wi-Fi trusted and my Wi-Fi guest networks being sent through those VLANs. So just like you would see on a normal switch level, we're bringing that same functionality on the access points and on the firewall. So we can also configure send and receive untagged traffic for selected VLAN, and that's at VLAN 1 management VLAN right there. So once we have that set up, we can go ahead and click OK, save those settings. Now the next step is to enable the gateway wireless controller. This one has been previously set up, as you can see here, but if this was your first time going in there, you would just need to click on enable the gateway wireless controller, save that to your firewall before you're able to actually configure any settings in here. So if we look at the settings, we have a WatchGuard access point passphrase on there. You can configure a custom one. You can automatically update the AP firmware when a new version is available on the XTM device. So again, to be able to update your access points firmware, all you need to do is update the firmware of the firewall, and that would be pushed out. You can send log messages to syslog, management VLAN, wireless scan. So again, that rogue access point scanning, you can send that here, and then your alarm notification. Now, as I mentioned in the past, one of the important elements of getting those notifications is getting Dimension set up so that you get those email alerts sent out from Dimension. And then your MAC address control from there as well. So as we set up a SSID, let's just go in and look at, very similar to the built-in wireless, we're going to have the option to broadcast SSID, respond to SSID queries. We can do enable station isolation so that one device isn't able to talk to the other. And we're simply going to do VLAN tagging. So that's where it's on the right VLAN. We can actually do rate shaping. So sometimes people say we want to make sure, or we have maybe a high density area. Maybe it's a some kind of area where a church congregates, and we have maybe 300 attendees, all with wireless access or wireless devices, and we have a series of access points on the ceiling. Now, we obviously don't want a wireless device to be connected to the furthest access point, so we can play around with, for instance, the rate shaping on here. So we're able to say this is the base rate, the ceiling rate, and if it's too low, we're slowing everyone else down, we're going to bump you from that. We have the security mode on here, so obviously when we talk about a guest SSID, we don't want to have security because we want anyone to be able to join our network. Now, the other thing is that we could have, I've seen cases where they put the password of the day on the wall so that they don't have people just hanging out in the parking lot and surfing all night. So what we can do is we can set that passphrase, or we can actually do a ticket authentication through our hotspot. Pretty cool little feature that we have with WatchGuard. We can also say, you know what, to stop people from camping out in the parking lot and surfing my Wi-Fi all night, I could say let's activate, or let's enable an activation schedule. So Wi-Fi is only available in this case between 9 and 5. So that's an option as well. Then we're going to look at the employee side. So in this case, we have a WatchGuard employee. We're going to broadcast SSID and respond to SSID queries. We're not going to do station isolation. One of the reasons why you might not want to do station isolation might be for wireless printing. So if you had a wireless printer that was joined, obviously, to wireless, and you had your iPhone and wanted to use iPrint, station isolation would break that feature. So in some cases, you might not want to do station isolation. Enable VLAN tagging, again, rate shaping activation. In this case, we might want to have a, or not might, obviously best security practices would be to set up either a pre-shared key or have a radius for those devices as well. And then in this case, we don't have any access points with the SSID yet because I'm going to show you how to join that. So that was basically setting up the SSIDs, setting up the VLANs appropriately. Now the next step is that we want to just go in and pair this AP300. So it's plugged in, again, to the PoE port. It's in a discovery mode. I'm going to go ahead and just refresh and see if any new access points are on the network. So as we look at the unpaired access points, we see the AP300. I can click on it, click on pair, join using a default pairing phrase, or I can go ahead and create a custom one that I previously set up. So in this case, we have the name on there. This is tying directly into the Mac. We can do location, type in a custom location, and just like before, we can say, you know what, let's go ahead and we're just going to keep that default as management VLAN 1. If I wanted to, I could disable those LEDs, use outdoor channels, enable fast handover, or bandwidth or band steering. Now, with band steering, that's that option to be able to convert a client to 2.4 on up to a 5 gigahertz. And the way that works is if you would need to configure an SSID on both radios that's identical with the identical authentication. So if someone joined and we had WatchGuard employee and they had a new iPhone, the iPhone could then, or the radio would then say, you know what, you're joined on 2.4, let's go ahead and bump you up to 5 gigahertz and be able to leverage those throughput speeds of the 5 gigahertz band on there. That's band steering. Now that can actually work against a fast handover. So what fast handover is that if I'm joined to access point A and I'm walking to across the hall and suddenly I joined to access point B, let's say I was using data sensitive applications such as maybe a WhatsApp call or doing a FaceTime call where I don't want those packets to be dropped, I can enable a fast handover, and that's going to skip that authentication and push me right over to that other access point because we know we've previously authenticated. So these two can actually work against each other, so just be cautious on that. But in most cases, enable band steering is going to be the one you want to be able to bump those up. So as we look at the radio, we see your radio settings. If you have worked with WatchGuard in the past, you're pretty familiar. These do have two radios, the AP300. And in this case, we can configure a GNN radio for radio 1. Choose that AC for radio 2. Again, 5 gigahertz. This was 2.4. Now in this case, we can go ahead and add WG guest and employee on both sides because we want to match them for that band steering. Click OK. Click OK. We save it, and that's basically as little work as it is to install a new access point on the network. So it's saving the new configuration to the firewall, and then the access points are going to be broadcasting those SSIDs. So then the next step is to configure the hotspot. So if we look at authentication, hotspot, there's some options here. So what WatchGuard gives you the flexibility to do is choose which interface you want the hotspot to be on. Now in the event that you wanted it to be on the wired side, you could set that up for trusted LAN or VLAN management. Obviously you wouldn't want to do that. But in this case, we want to enable the hotspot for a Wi-Fi guest on there. So we can do that, select Wi-Fi guest. We have our session timeout, idle timeout. So again, pretty similar to some of the other authentication features you've seen from WatchGuard. Now what we can actually do is choose a hotspot type, custom page or an external guest authentication. So in this case, we can work together in an ecosystem. We're announcing some very exciting new relationships as well. So be on the lookout for that. But we can customize our own custom page here. We can say allow all users to connect without credentials. Customize that, or we can choose to require users to authenticate with generated credentials from here. So we have usernames and passphrases or passphrases only, and this gives you the address to be able to manage those guest portal accounts on there. If we choose customized guest hotspot page, we have different, we have a page title, I've previously said it in here, a welcome message, and then maybe you have your acceptable use agreement that you have on your terms and conditions. And as you look at how that preview looks, you can customize your logo. Someone would need to click on I've read and accept, checkbox, click OK, and then they would have access to your wireless guest network. So that's basically the key features, the key steps on enabling and securing your wireless, creating 2 separate SSIDs of separating your guest traffic as well as your employee traffic. Maybe you have a restaurant that you're running Square on, that you need those iPads to be separated from your guest network. You would leverage what we've covered today. So with that, I wanted to wrap up the session. Thank you for attending the FireBytes. I will go ahead and throw up, let me do that real quick here, the YouTube channel that has all these tips and tricks on there, being able to, allowing you to be able to reference them at a future date. So it's just youtube.com/WatchGuardNW, or you can email me at johan.blumhart@watchguard.com. I will be glad to help you out with any questions. But with that, I wanted to thank you for your time today and look forward to seeing you at a future FireBytes session. Thank you so much.